Hello and welcome to Long Shadows. She lives to play golf. Joanne Goulet designed her life around golf. And in doing so, she became a force to be reckoned with on golf courses in Saskatchewan and around the world, and has been for close to 60 years. Since she won the first golf tournament she ever entered at the age of 14, Joanne Goulet has collected 31 Regina City championships. She didn't lose one she entered until 1991. She collected 9 provincial crowns and was twice a member of the provincial teams that won the Canadian national title. At 16, she was a member of the Saskatchewan ladies team at the Canadian Championships in Montreal. That's Joanne on the left. A decade later, she was a member of the Canadian team at the first Women's World Amateur Championships in Paris, France, just shortly after suffering a bizarre semifinal loss at the British Open. It took the British Army to beat her. We'll hear that story. She was inducted into the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame in 1980, and in 1991 became the first woman in Canada, perhaps in North America, to have a golf course named in her honor. Heck, they even named a city street after her here in Regina. Not bad for little Joanne Goulet. That's her with her father, born into the Goulet clan of Montmartre, Saskatchewan back in 1936. Joanne is still in the hunt at seniors events and tournaments around this province, and she's always ready for a game of golf. Joanne, welcome to Long Shadows.
Thank you.
Is there anything better than golf?
No,
Nothing.
I don't think
You
so.
didn't pause a second there. For those who've never taken the game up or don't understand it, and there are people out there like that, I understand,
That's true.
what's so good about it?
I don't know. It's fresh air. It's meeting people. It's being competitive if you want, relaxing if you want it to be that way. You can play by yourself, but most people prefer to play in a group. Every day, every shot is different, and it's just a fascination.
Do you like the social aspect?
Definitely.
Why so?
I don't know. It's an easy way to meet people, learn about them, find out that they weren't quite the gentlemen on the golf course that they were in the clubhouse, or vice versa.
True colors show, do they?
Well, I've always said, and if a person had a selfish bent to their nature, golf would amplify it very quickly.
Did you take lessons?
No?
How did you learn?
When you're a kid, you can imitate. And Bob Hitchens was the pro at the gyro when I started, and he never gave us formal lessons, but he would encourage us to go and caddy for somebody that we liked the way they chipped or whatever. And then he also would give us timely bits of advice, such as if you're hitting 2 golf shots out of 3 swipes at it, you are golfing well. And if you hit a bad shot off a tee box, but it looks like you're going to have a full swing at the next one, then you're really not in trouble. And different little things like that.
Who did you play with?
All the neighborhood kids. We all had one club.
One club.
Right.
Do you remember which club you had? Which?
I had a 4-iron.
A 4-iron.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the neighbor found it in the attic when they moved in, and it was left-handed.
Are you left-handed?
No.
You played left-handed with a
Well, we puttered around at that time. And
what did you do
mostly,
for golf balls?
We went in the creek and got them and sold them and made money. And this was shortly after the war, so there weren't that many golf balls around, and people were anxious to get the one they put in the creek back. And they'd give us a dime for giving it back to them. And on a long weekend, we'd make $20, which was a lot of money.
No kidding. And I guess if you went out for a game and you only had a couple of balls, you better hit them straight.
Right.
You'd learn to hit that way.
Well, you learned what pressure was when you only down to 1 and there's still 2 or 3 creeks to cross.
When did you get your first set of clubs?
On my 14th birthday, family tradition was your birthday was your day in the year, more so than any other day, and you got what you wanted up to $5. And if you didn't know what you wanted, then you got the $5. And the relatives came over that were around, came over for cake and coffee. And I said I wanted some golf clubs. And my father and a friend of his went down to Brown's auction rooms and bought these clubs for $1.50. It was a 2-wood with a steel shaft, which was the latest in technology at the time, and 3 wooden shafted woods, and a putter. That was a 2-way putter, a wooden shaft on that too, and a bag that was torn from top to bottom, so you had to be careful how you put the clubs in. But I was the neighborhood hero. I had more than one club.
You played barefooted, didn't you?
Yeah, most of the time.
Would you still play barefooted if you could?
Well, not on these feet now. They've gone a lot of miles and they're a little worn, but at that time they were pretty tough feet. But Waskasoo was heaven playing Waskasoo in your bare feet.
Did your parents play golf?
No.
So what did they think when you won the first tournament you ever entered?
Oh, my mother thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread, coming in the door with this gorgeous lamp and a picture done by Tom, I believe his name was McMullen, a charcoal sketch of the mountains, and in color though, and all framed and everything. She couldn't believe.
16 years old, you're on the Saskatchewan Championship women's team.
Right.
You win here, you're on the train to Montreal. You get there, you must have been in heaven.
Oh, definitely. Everything. Saskatchewan had not had a young golfer since Margesson out of Rosetown in the mid-30s, and this was the very early 50s, and the golf clubs assured my parents that the clubs in Regina and in Saskatchewan in general assured my parents that everything that I needed golf-wise would be looked after. Bob Hitchens even had a set of Spalding, who were a big name in golf at that time, a beginner set, we'd call it, with steel shafts that were double imprinted on the back, and he was going to send them back, but he said he'd sell them to me for cost price, which I think was $35. And I could pay on my revenue from the Creek golf balls, and I think every time I took in 3, he'd give me back 2 and take 1. And I'm not sure I ever paid in full for those clubs, but I had a bag and these brand new clubs, and off I went to Montreal. And the bag was only about the size of I don't know what, but anyway, when I got there, everybody else had a great big huge bag, and it was full of golf clubs, but somehow I wasn't intimidated. I just was I guess, so proud to be there, and at that time, the youngest player ever to play in a national championship.
One of the strangest golf stories you will ever hear is coming up next. The story of Joanne Goulet at the British Open. We'll be right back. This is Long Shadows. I'm Bruce Steele. My guest is Joanne Goulet. You're a golf whiz, but you experienced probably the strangest golf incident I've ever heard of in my life. This is you teeing off at the British Open in 1964. I want you to tell the story of what happened on the last round of that tournament.
Well, I was playing Bridget Jackson, who was a British champion and also an international player of renown in the Commonwealth. And we got to the 18th hole. We were tied. And you got to remember, this was 36 holes a day. You kept playing as long as you kept winning.
36 holes a day?
A day. Anyway, my ball was on the green and had rolled down into a swale on the right-hand side of the green, and hers went over the green and under the scoring tent. And it was actually like a trailer. And mulled around and mulled around and mulled around.
This
and,
would be the judges trying to decide
well,
what the
and
rule
referees
was.
and whatnot. And I.
What are you thinking at this point?
Well, I'm standing in the swale waiting to putt and thinking this is a big hill I got to go up, but I just need to 2 or 3 putt because she's going to have to take a penalty and play it back over this trailer. When somebody got the idea that it was a movable obstruction, and over in England where golf is still quite a spectator sport, the British Army was doing the security duty at the golf course, and they got them over and they moved the trailer and she chipped up and fortunately for her but unfortunately for me sunk the putt, and of course I took 3 to get it down from where I was and I lost, but I was so tired by this time it really was kind of a relief almost.
Bizarre. I just can't imagine it though. I mean, you got to be standing there thinking, as you say, I've got her.
Oh yeah.
And then the British Army marches in.
And moves this trailer because it was on wheels. It was a movable obstruction, so they moved it.
Did it affect your game at all? Did that loss affect your game?
No, because I've always sort of golfed with the attitude that every time you go out and play, and I don't care if it's recreationally or competitively, something is going to happen that you've never seen before. And it was just one of those things.
It certainly did. You went from there to Paris.
Right.
To the championship, the first Ladies International World Championship.
Right.
How many teams?
I think there was something like 54 or 56 countries. And I think what I brought home from that was the large gap between the ages of the countries. The Swedes and the Irish and various others were very young, and the older Commonwealth countries, Australia, New Zealand, Bermuda, and were very old.
Tough competition?
Very. Francis Lacoste, and I'm sure some of those on the British team and South African team. And I don't believe the one from Australia eventually played on the U.S. tour early on. None of the American amateurs, I don't think, ever went on U.S. tour.
Why didn't you go on the tour?
Excuse me. It just didn't seem possible. Besides, was when I was gone a month overseas, I was so homesick it wasn't even funny. I don't think I could have lived out of a suitcase, to tell you the truth.
Didn't like it?
The opportunity wasn't there. This was before there were scholarships to U.S. colleges, and I had never seen the Americans play until I went to that British Open, and what surprised me was that I was beating them, and I felt that I guess I proved a point that they don't golf any better than I do, and at least at that particular time, and I just never considered the U.S. thing as an option.
1980, Manitoba, the championship there, you came out of the pack, and the last day they weren't paying any attention to you. You weren't even on the radar. Came out of the pack, beat them, and after the tournament was over, you told the Winnipeg Tribune, my approach is to just go out and scare somebody. That's all I do. Is that how you play golf?
Well, in a way, I loved that Manitoba championship because it was played on 3 different courses over 3 different days, the better ones in Winnipeg, and I had an aunt there, and my mother used to come with me, and she'd visit her sister, and I'd go golfing. Anyway, I remember that particular because we played at a golf course called the Elmhurst, and there was a wind that day of, I couldn't begin to guess, but it would be up in the 50s and 60s. And these big tall pine trees all around the course, and it was just one of those old designs where the wind was sideways on the first hole and the 18th hole, and the rest of the holes you were either straight into it or the wind was straight behind you. And I shot something like 77, and everybody else was way up in high 90s or low, or high 80s or low 90s. And they were just amazed that I could shoot that kind of a round in a wind like that. But it was what's to figure out. If 3 clubs more to shoot into the wind, then it's 3 clubs less when the wind is behind you. And side wind didn't matter because these tall pine trees really, it didn't affect the ball at all. So there was really nothing to figure out.
How much, before you started a game of golf, how much do you just kind of suss out the atmosphere like that and the course and get yourself comfortable? Is that important?
Right, but every golf course, I guess, has, especially the older ones, has a certain pattern. It's either built in a sort of a figure 8 or an H or whatever. And so they have a certain pattern, and most golf courses, after you've played 5-6 holes, start to repeat themselves, or they're very similar in the look of the hole or the length of the hole or what have you. So there, yeah, you
get a plan?
Well, the plan is, when it's a new course, is just try to put the ball on the fairway and then try to put the ball in the middle of the green, and you really shouldn't have any trouble.
That's the first piece of advice you gave me.
Yeah.
Shoot for the center of the green. The cup can't be far away.
No.
And you were right.
Right.
We'll be back with Joanne Goulet right after this. Joanne Goulet, champion golfer, gal about Saskatchewan and the courses of this province. My guest today on Long Shadows. I want to show you a picture of a golf club. And you recognize that at all?
I do.
Have you played there?
Not since they moved it to where it is now, but I did before that.
Is there a course in Saskatchewan you haven't played?
There probably is, but I would say that I've probably seen it. I do still go around and for the Saskatchewan Golf Association and do course ratings, so that provides an opportunity to see most of them. And
how do you do that? How do you rate a course?
Oh, it's a bit complex after you get into it, but or it seems to be, but it's just a standard by which it's measured up against other golf courses in Canada and so on. And again, the same saying applies. I went down to Thompson Lake a few years ago to rate their golf course, and I hadn't been there for 25 years, and it was cute grass green golf course when I was there before. They had that thing, they've redesigned it, and 2 sets of tees, and condition-wise it would have rivaled the best golf course in Canada. Huge greens, lovely sand traps. I could not believe this was the same place.
There are some great courses in this province.
Oh, and you know, every day I hear about another one that's converted, of course, to grass greens, and a lot of them have had to move sort of from the edge of town where they were before out a ways. But I would venture to say that grass green golf courses will become sort of like curling rinks with artificial ice in the rural communities. They will draw from all around, and everybody's going to live happily ever after type thing.
It used to be a whole community event, didn't it, to come out and take care of the course and get it ready in the spring and maintain it during the year.
Oh, yeah. Volunteers did that, and I think that's why every community had a sand green golf course, because it was on the edge of town, and you can still see some examples of drop boxes with a little brown envelope. It used to be leave your 50-cent green fee here, but now some of them are as much as $2.
$2 a round.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Windthorst.
What do you like in Saskatchewan for a golf course? Name me your favorite course.
Well, there just will not ever be another one in Saskatchewan to compare with Deer Valley out by Lumsden. Aesthetically, it's the most beautiful golf course I've ever been on. There are no two holes that resemble any other hole you've played on that golf course. And you get down in the, I call it the valley part, the lower part of the golf course, and you look around, and you have a hard time convincing yourself you're golfing somewhere in Saskatchewan.
What else do you like? What other
Main
courses?
prize. I like Elk Ridge up north. Some of my favorites are some of the 9-hole courses like Riverhurst or this Thompson Lake. Or there are so many that you like for a different reason.
How about your own?
The Goulet golf course? Well, I like one 9 much better than the other 9, but
One's full of water and the other one isn't.
Quite so full. Anyway, I've said about the Regina Golf Club that if you could play in the low 70s there, you can play in the low 70s anywhere.
It's a tough club.
Right.
You were a pretty good curler in your time.
Well, yeah, I probably was as talented at making what you would call the pressure shots in curling as I was in golfing. But I had an opportunity to go to university provided by my employer, and I opted for that instead. And the most relieved person at the Caledonian Curling Club was Marge Mitchell, because she just could never beat us.
Uh-oh.
And we knocked her out of many a club play down, a city play down, or you name it. And we were good friends, but it was just one of those competitive things.
Are you a competitive person? You'd have to be.
Oh yeah, if the moment's right, yeah, sure.
Baseball you were good at, too.
Right. Played, of course, at high school and whatnot, and played, tried out for the Govans and made the team. And Gil Strum said, you're going to play right field? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think I'm going to go golfing instead. And he was not too pleased. However, in hindsight, baseball wouldn't have lasted as long as golf has. So
That's true enough. I'm going to go back to the golf course because it must have been a heck of an honor to find out they're going to call it the Joanne Goulet.
oh, I couldn't believe it, but I could. And to be honest, I never felt prouder of being a Saskatchewan person than I did that day when they asked me if I would let my name stand. For the simple reason that I know in my heart that it wouldn't have happened anywhere else but Saskatchewan.
You got a lot of support, didn't you,
Right?
through the years? I mean, your family was not wealthy,
No.
and you were playing at a time when it was a wealthy person's game.
Well, except at the gyro it wasn't. But $3.50 for or $3 a year for a junior. Of course, the Regina Club was only $5, but I guess it was this aspect of a young golfer coming along, and we would turn them a more senior generation of golfers playing at that time. They certainly made sure I didn't lack for anything, and I don't mean financially necessarily. They knew that I got to golf tournaments on time and billeted, made sure I had a billet, or made sure I was aware.
Anything
Right.
From socks to clubs to you name it, showed up in your life from people you never knew existed. And you know something? We're all so darn proud of you, and so glad you played for so long. And I haven't played you in a long time, and one of these days we'll get together and do just that.
Right.
Before you hang out the gloves. Are you ever going to hang out the gloves?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Oh, darn. I thought there was going to be hope for me at one point, but it's absolutely not. Joanne, a pleasure to have you come and join us here on Long Shadows. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.